Welcome back to Creative Block. Our next guest is Laurie Stephen. She has taken the historical art of Italian mass theater known as Commedia dell'arte and turned it into enthralling contemporary theater. Laurie Stephen shows contributor Maureen Welch some exquisite theatrical masks. You work in mask. Tell me about that.
Well, I've always wanted to do a stylized kind of theater. I'm not interested in realism. I'm interested in taking audiences into imaginative worlds. And so masks were kind of a natural. Masks are kind of larger than life caricatures of human traits. I always think of them as often comic versions of the 7 deadly sins. You've got masks that are about pride and greed and boastfulness and lust. So it's a great field for social satire. It's also great for myth. And so masks are a great way of portraying characters in myth and folktale.
We're surrounded by a lot of very interesting faces that you've brought with you here today. A lot of interesting faces. You have specific mask artists who work with you. Who are those people that have created these for you?
Well, Karen Rod is a principal creator for the company, and we've collaborated together for 15 years or more. She's a Toronto mask artist who's done wonderful work. But I've also worked with Felix Merpt, who I mentioned, and Louise Lapointe is a brilliant Montreal mask artist. It's a very collaborative process, the design phase between myself and a designer.
There you are, Botchface! Hold it! Isn't he the sweet beauty to be mocking mine?
I've read that your work has been described as a Western approach to mask. Could you explain that to me?
Well, I think when people say Western approach to mask, they really mean Commedia dell'arte, because that was where I started. Commedia was an Italian Renaissance form of theater. Actors wore masks, they played in the streets, they improvised. It was rough and bawdy, satirical. That's kind of the roots of my work. But actually, much of the last 15 years, I've experimented with integrating Eastern and Western forms of masked theater. So I've worked with Asian dance drama artists who specialize in things like Peking opera and kathakali. And a few years ago, I took an Indonesian shadow puppet play and turned it into a masked dance theater piece. I wanted to open up our stage for artists from around the world and different art forms that work in mask to give them an opportunity and a voice on our stage. I started breaking boundaries and moving out of commedia masks, large, oversized masks, masks you wear on your head, and then stripping the mask away and working with whiteface or a clown nose or even a big hat. All of a sudden that becomes a mask because it takes away the actor's ability to work with their face, and they start to have to work physically with their bodies in a kind of physical poetry.
He's talking to himself! Unbelievable recklessness!
What's different than when you start working in a contemporary piece with mask as opposed to a classical piece with mask? What do you immediately see that's different?
Well, when I start with a classical piece, I take a look at the script and think about it as a starting point. And I always have to dig inside and go, well, what's this really about, and why would anybody today care about it? So when we worked on The Miser, it's ultimately a story about greed. And so I thought of the movie Wall Street, and I thought, how can I have a mass comic clown world version of Wall Street for the audience so they really get what Molière was talking about?
Because I won't have a filthy spy eyeing all that I own on the lookout for something to steal. How can anyone steal from you when you guard it all day and night?
Now, when you work on an original play, it's a different kettle of fish because when I'm writing, I have to ask myself what I believe in. So when I worked on my recent piece, A Guy Named Joe, it's about poverty, it's comic, but it's about poverty and it's about crime. I couldn't rely on Molière to give me his views on poverty and crime. I had to ask myself, what do I think? Do I think there are some times when it's justified to use crime? And so you wrestle with your own views when you write yourself.
20 20 years.
20 years for robbery? This is crap. Make you do something. Go back for 3 and don't come back with more than 5.
You write, you direct, you create, you perform, you teach, you learn yourself, you continue to learn and take workshops all over the world. What is it that you love best about what you do?
When I started, it was directing was my passion. And I only wrote things so that I would have something to direct that I really wanted to direct. Because there isn't a contemporary body of work written for mask and comedia and physical theater. But then 5 years ago, the writing bug just took over. And now writing is my #1 passion. That's all I want to do is sit alone and write.
It's amazing to me that you never seem to run out of new places to go with mask. You're experimenting so much. You're bringing different cultures together. You're bringing different forms of art together. What's the #1 thing that you learn from mask, or you've learned so far in your life from working with mask?
It's a crazy thing to say, but I learned to think with my body.
Oh, Gracie!
It's a different way of thinking. Masks put you in touch with your gut feelings. They put you in touch with your emotions, and they let you think visually. And so that's, as a director, as a writer, as a teacher, that's what masks, I think, do most for me.
I order you!
What's your creative process? What do you start with? How do you move through the piece until it's ready to be performed?
With trauma. It often starts with an image, and they come from all kinds of places. In writing, I just improvise all over the place. I have scenes, I have backstories, I have families, I have characters. The play ends up being about 4 hours long. But at some point, I have to sit myself down, and that's where my other side, my philosophical side of my brain kicks back in and say, all right, what's the story? Who's the central character? And why are you telling an audience about these guys? What's important about that? And so we get some discipline, we get a structured story, and then it goes back and forth in the writing and editing between the two sides of the brain.
I can't help you unless you tell me what's going on.
I was evicted. Can you sign a form for first and last month's rent?
If there was a way to hook up your brain to a film screen and to project what was on it, what do you think people would say?
They'd say I have a lot of really great friends, because these characters all become friends. I know them better than the people I know in my life. I spend more time with them than I spend with my husband. So yeah, they think I have a much better social life than I do.
Nice. You've got a big group of friends upstairs.
Yeah, I do.
What do you, in a performance, what do you want your audience to feel? What do you want your audience to take away with them?
Well, I'm usually working on some kind of issue. It might be about empowerment, or it might be about love. So I hope they go away and think about that. But I think the most important thing for me is that the audience goes away feeling like they've unlocked a gateway into their imaginations. If I can make an audience feel that they've touched something creative in themselves by watching a performance, that's the highlight.
I know just what you mean, madame.
Welcome back. Up next, Laurie Stephen talks about her unique theater workshops using masks. And contributor Maureen Welch even takes a workshop herself.
But that animal isn't worthy that I speak to him, except to insult him.
I remember taking a workshop with you 20 years ago when I was in high school, my very first workshop in mask. And you had brought in so many beautiful masks, and there were a lot of them that were the hat, the comedia masks, but you also had full head masks, and there was one that I tried on, I get goosebumps just thinking about it, that really, that was netted, the eyes were netted, and it really put me in a different place. Does the mask itself, the way it fits the head, how it fits the face, does that change what kind of character will come out of it as well?
Oh yes, because some masks have tiny little, we had a mask that had tiny little holes for eyes, and they were lopsided, and so the actor, in order to play that and see where they're going, had to do this. And they had to keep walking. I mean, this must look crazy, but they had to keep walking like this before they'd kill themselves. And actually, it was for a drunken character, so it was just perfect.
Informed the character for them.
It did.
What is the number one thing that you want a student to take away from a workshop they've had with you?
I think there are probably two things. One is to trust their own creative impulses and just let loose and discover what's inside them. But then I really want them to know that there's a stage between that and the final product that involves a lot of hard work and craft. And be prepared to do that.
Each moan sounded like someone's name. Yours, in fact.
You're moving into winter performances. You're coming inside. Tell me what's coming up for you indoors with the theatre.
Well, we've introduced a small experimental program. So periodically, we will do an indoor winter production.
Can we expect the same kind of greatness that we see outside, inside with your theatre works?
Yes, but be prepared for a journey into a different kind of world.
I look forward to it. Thank you very much, Laurie.
Okay, thank you.